Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is Saas Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the Saas Fuel podcast, where our sales strategy meets AI, and suddenly our leads are multiplying like rabbits on a first date. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I hope you to be SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about creating a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. A couple of days ago, I talked about new product development and bringing solutions to market. Had a great conversation with Derek Osgood on the podcast about building what sells and selling what you build. Great stuff. Had a number of questions sent over about go-to-market, best channels, what's working now, and what should I do in this scenario. And if there was a summary of the questions, it would have been something like, now that I've validated the idea and built it, what is the fastest way to get traction and revenue? And that pretty much sums up the question. And here's my take. And I try to make it apply to both new solutions as well as product extensions or new major features. So here it is. How do I see that? How do I go about that? Step one is to maximize customer success stories. In B2B SaaS world, nothing speaks louder than success. But not your success, their success. The solution is about them. It's not about you. And that is so hard to remember when it comes to marketing. I don't know why that's so hard, but it is. But encourage your satisfied clients to share their experiences through detailed case studies or testimonials. For instance, if your software helped a company streamline their operations and achieve significant cost savings, work with them to create a compelling case study about that. Now, highlighting these stories not only showcases the value of your solution, but also builds trust with potential customers. So what if you don't have any? What if this is brand new? I don't have any, customers. I don't have any success stories. I need to get some. That's what this is about, Jeff. Come on. Well, if you don't have any, get some. Get beta testers. Give some free products. Get some discounted users, whatever it is. But do that in return for a case study. And where I always mess this up is I forget to capture the before state. And the after is easy. They're like, oh, this is so awesome. And that's cool. But what was life like before? Because there's no story without a beginning, a middle, and an end. And end doesn't mean they go away. End is just like the conclusion of the story. It's the now part. It's the after. So make sure you get that, the beginning, the middle, and the end, and capture that before state. Second is to foster strategic partnerships. This is one of my all-time favorite strategies. Love this one. Partially because the acquisition cost is relatively low and it's just worked really well. I've generated over 200 million in ARR off this single strategy alone. And that is to collaborate with complementary businesses or industry influencers to expand your reach. For example, if your SaaS product enhances project management, then partner with a well-known project management consultancy or an industry thought leader. And by aligning with established names in the industry, you can tap into their audience and gain credibility. Leads to increased visibility and adoption of your solution. And here's a pro tip. If there's like a number one in the industry, don't go after them. Leave the number ones because they don't care. They won't give you the time of day and they're not great partners anyway. For the most part, there are exceptions to everything. But for our purposes here, forget about number one. Go to number 2, 3, 4, and 5. And sometimes not even number 1 or number 2, 3, 4, and 5 sometimes will be your best opportunities for partnership. Sometimes number 2 is outstanding because they're all trying to compete against number 1. And what happens is, your solution gives them an advantage to compete against number 1. And I think that's an important piece. If you're going to go the partner route, it has to be an advantage for them. They don't want to sell your stuff. And if you go into partnership that way, hey, sell my stuff, will not work. You got to make it to where you show them how your stuff helps them sell more of their stuff. It makes them more competitive, makes them win deals against number 1 when they're number 2, 3, 4, or 5. Number 3 is to invest in targeted content marketing. Share content that addresses specific pain points or industry trends that are relevant to your target audience. In the case we're talking about here, we're talking about sales and SaaS. How do you take a product to market? How do you get that viral effect? Create white papers, webinars, blog posts that offer insights, position your product as a solution to specific challenges that your target audience has. So, for example, if your SaaS product caters to the healthcare industry, then make content that addresses common operational inefficiencies, and there's plenty of them within those healthcare organizations. Here's the thing: don't try and sell your product within those. Provide actionable advice. And what it does is it demonstrates your expertise, and you can attract and engage potential customers and turn them into advocates. So, what does that look like in practice? Well, you're watching it. This video is an example of just that. It's something that doesn't ask for anything, but it is adding value to your ideal clients. So there is no guarantee of viral success. I wish there was. But by leveraging customer success stories, strategic partnerships, and engaging in targeted content marketing, focusing on these three areas, you can not only enhance your product's visibility, but also establish it as an indispensable solution within your industry. So, what strategies have you used to blow up awareness and create a viral effect for your solution? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to uplevel your revenue, then check out my book, Small Fish, Big Pond, Building a World-Class Business That Swims Circles Around Competitors. Small Fish, Big Pond delivers powerful marketing and leadership lessons guaranteed to enhance your marketing message, wrap value around your clients, and guide their buying journey to conclude that your company is the only solution for them. It includes step-by-step frameworks and time-tested growth principles to attract ideal clients, convert them, and then transform them into your brand ambassadors. Pick up the print, ebook, or audio today at smallfishbigpond.com, Amazon, or your favorite book source. And remember, all book profits go to charity, always. Our founder on Tuesday was Derek Osgood. I talked about him in the opener. Founder and CEO of Ignition, a collaborative go-to-marketing platform that accelerates product launches for marketing and product teams. So he's launched 100 plus products, doing $1 billion in revenue. Great insights for irresistible marketing, building what sells and selling what you built. That's what we talked about on Tuesday. And our expert guest last Thursday was Morgan McCoy, founder of Brag and Write Consulting. We had a great back and forth about equitable compensation, negotiating goals, performance reviews, and leading high-performing teams really well. If you missed either of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. My guest today is Ryan Staley, founder and CEO of Whale Boss. Ryan grew a business unit from 0 to 30 million ARR with just 4 salespeople. That is pretty amazing. Ryan's been recognized as a top AI thought leader for revenue growth, and he has taught his proprietary revenue growth methodologies to over 800 VPs and chief revenue officers from companies you might know like Amazon, Google, and lots of startups. Welcome someone who puts the AI in sales, little nautical humor, Ryan Staley. Hey, Ryan, welcome to Saas Fuel.
Thanks for having me on, man. Looking forward to it. I'm excited to flip sides. You're on my show. You gave an awesome interview. So I'm excited to be on here as well.
Yeah, I love having you here. And background, sales, revenue growth. Tell me a little bit about that and how it led you to develop systems for pipeline creation and then referral-led growth.
Yeah, no problem, Matt. So I started all the way did you ever see the movie Boiler Room?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Which most people have, right? It's besides if
anybody
you're
that's in sales probably has seen that, and they either love it or hate it.
Yeah, you're if you're watching the video version of this, I have a picture of Tommy Boy where Chris Farley is lighting a car on fire and David Spade's looking at him right behind me. So that's another classic cult sales movie. So anyways, that was my first job out of school when I graduated, and I thought that was normal, right? Where they're like, hey, you got to make 250 dials a day. You don't have an email account. And you have to try and close them within a few hours. And you have to get a hold of CIOs of the largest investment banks and brokerages in the world. And so that's where it kind of all started. It actually started a little earlier, but it was really good foundationally from a grit perspective because I was too stupid at that point or naive to know any better, right? And so awesome thing about it is that was foundational, and then it kept growing from there. I moved from like inside sales to mid market to enterprise, or back in the day they called it outside sales, right?
Right.
And then the same thing kind of happened on the leadership side, where I moved up through different leadership ranks. I turned around underperforming offices, which was funny. When they first interviewed me, I effectively they would not interview me in the office. Because their office was above a Jimmy John's, they always interviewed me at a Starbucks. So note to self: if you ever run into that, that's a red flag, right? But it was a
Yeah.
good example there. And what happened throughout my career is every time that I failed, I had like my biggest peak usually shortly thereafter. And so that actually happened when I was there. Is I worked so much and spent so much time working, and I was hitting my number as a team leader, but it was the first time I was truly stretched that much. And so I felt like I was getting pressed from my team for more. And then I was getting pressed from the founder and the CEO for more. And so people really didn't like to work for me at that time because I was pressing them so hard. And I was working 60, 70 hours a week. So mentally, physically, emotionally fatigued. From there, what happened though, they're like, hey, Ryan, we're going to take a step back. We're going to take your team away from you. And we want you to start a different group from scratch. Started that group, grew that from 0 to 30 million in ARR. And eventually got 4 salespeople on my team, but grew that from scratch, no go to market, no background in terms of playbooks or anything like that. And we had no SDRs or marketing either. And so that was really foundational because it taught me, and I've learned this earlier in my career too, but like how to really, really leverage creativity for growth when it comes to it. Like I know a lot of bootstrap companies are doing that now. A lot of folks listening, right? And so that did like basically embody that within the revenue org side of it. And then started helping companies deploy those systems in their business. And then the other thing that I'm lit up by is leveraging AI to kind of do the same thing and stack another level on top of it so that people could grow really fast and scale their people. And so that's just a little bit of a background on that, which is what kind of led to the pipeline and the referral-led growth, which we can get into more, but I'll pause for a second. Let me see if you have any follow-up questions on that.
Well, I mean, 0 to 30 million ARR. I mean, that is impressive. And you said 4 sales reps. What is the secret to that without having the marketing support and the SDRs and the infrastructure around that? How did you do that?
Yeah. So, and it's a great question. That's the one that I often get asked about it. And so like, I would break it down into like 3 core components from like a business perspective. And then I could hit the emotional side of it too. So the first one on the business is targeting. What I did is I deployed a strategy that Snowflake uses as well as Vista Equity uses. And Vista Equity effectively uses it to basically double or triple the revenue in a 3-year period for $1 billion companies, right? And the thing was like, I didn't know that this was even a strategy that they used at the time. And I think it was before Snowflake was even around. But really what I looked at is the client segmentation. And I looked at the top 20% of our customer base. Instead of having an ideal customer profile, I looked at the top 20% of our customer base and created a perfect customer profile. So those were the companies that typically the top 20% that created 80% of the revenue. And then I also looked at variables around like how fast they closed. Because if you have a really large deal, but it takes 3 years to close, that's not super sustainable, right? So I looked at it more from the aspect of like, what were the biggest, fastest deals we got to close? What were the unique outliers and verticals and industries that we're in? What did the decision maker look like? What were the trigger events? And then that created a new targeting profile that I leveraged and allowed us to double our deal size every single year for 5 years. And then like 100 to 1,000x our largest deal size. So that's step one. Step two, I would say, was like basically our pipeline acquisition method. Because we had laser focus on the targeting, and it's funny, I just introduced this to a startup I was working with, and they were like blown away by it because they're like, that's so simple. That makes so much sense. I don't know why we haven't done that before, right? And so what we did is we looked at that same strategy, but not just looked at it from like, okay, where are those top functional industry experts in those areas? So for example, if we were dealing with retail, where are the top CIOs of the top retailers that fit in that perfect customer profile? what events do they go to, what associations do they go to. We would target them and actually target the board members of those groups, get them as customers, and then they would push that down. Not necessarily push it down, but we would leverage their influence that they already achieved for that entire industry association or group they had. So we did that with a combination of events and associations. Thanks, man. So that was number two. And then number three was we really focused on the enterprise sales strategy because, like, if you look at all the sales methodologies, most of them, actually all of them, are designed looking internally, inside out, right? And it'd be kind of like the equivalent of like going on a first date and only talking about yourself the entire time. Like that's how these were designed, right? And
yeah.
isn't it true? Like, and so what we did is like, I'm like, okay, this doesn't make any sense because this is not how people buy, right? People buy on how they're evaluated from an organizational perspective, how they get promoted, and then like what's personally meaningful to them. So we layered in a whole deal strategy component around that. And those are kind of like, I would say, the three keys. There's a lot more than that, right? On the business side, but those are kind of the three keys that I would say are were most critical in terms of getting that result.
Like that. And now fast forward a few years, now you've layered AI on top of that. And what really sparked the interest in integrating artificial intelligence into revenue organizations? And how do you see that impacting business going forward?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, man. I think the reason why the interest came because I got introduced. So, as you know, my podcast is called The Scale Up Show. I'm rebranding it into more of an AI focus because I've had really a big obsession of that. So I haven't renamed it yet, but that's where it's at as of now. And really, why I became kind of obsessed with it is because like I always had to do more with less, right? And I didn't have VAs. I didn't have any. Just do more with less, right? And so I had to rely on my brain to do it. And so I'm like, okay, what if I could leverage as well something that operates a billion times faster and my brain to do it, right? And by the way, you could get these tools for $20 a month or $30 a month, which is amazing, right? Which has never been available to us in our entire lifetime. So that, and then the moment in time where I'm like, I am going to test this AI to see how good it is, right? So not it's just fast, but it's good. Let me see how good it is. I'm going to ask it questions that I know to be true from 10,000 hours of like experience and being with clients and C-level executives with my team. And it got close to 95% of the way there within a couple of questions. And so I'm like, this is both scary and exciting at the same time. I'm like, I could either run towards it or get run over by it. And I chose, to run towards it instead and help other people learn how to implement that and what they're doing as well.
So how do you use AI in daily sales? I mean, how does that work? How does it fit into the sales model?
Yeah, it's so I think it's not just sales, but it's the entire go-to-market function, right? But like, if we look at sales, you could look at it as, and I have a framework called TEAKS, which are like categories of use cases you could look at when deploying AI. So that's time, execution, acumen, money, and skills, or I should say knowledge and skills, right? And so if you're looking at those are the four areas, and I'll give you an example of time. An example of that would be like, there's a lot of repeated tasks, or there's probably I mapped this out. There's close to 24 different types of tasks that a sales rep needs to leverage, right? And usually they're only good at 5 or 6 of them, max, right? The rest of them are all like crappy things they have to do. They might be very good at verbally, but terrible at writing, right? They might be, and so writing an email takes long. Researching, like if you want to do good research for a big meeting, that could take 30, 35 minutes. There's a way where you could leverage a single prompt and get maybe 150% of the quality in like 2 minutes versus the 3 minutes, right? So all of these kind of stack up, and teams spend close to 75, 78% on non-selling activities. So my whole philosophy is let's double the amount of selling time that they have, but then also making that 1.5 to 2x better, right? And just by doing that, you have a massive improvement on what's possible in terms of doing that, in terms of results that teams get and everything else. And so that's why it's like super exciting. And the time is just one example. I mean, there's other examples of like strategic thinking, coaching. There's also like if you're a go-to-market leader or you're a CEO, I mean, you could tap into any individual in the world, it's well known. It could be Elon Musk. It could be, Steve Jobs, even people that aren't around anymore, and tap into their insight and then customize recommendations to you, which is something that's never, ever been available before in our life as well, which is super exciting from my perspective.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So tell me more about Teaks. How do you implement that into the sales process or even the go-to-market strategy?
Yeah. So the way I kind of approach it is, I think like because this is so new and because this can cover so many different areas and there's so many tools that have been implemented at
Yeah.
like, we talked about this when you're on my show, man. Like, I mean, what do we have? How many new SaaS companies were birthed this year? I mean, we're like, I don't know. Do you have any idea what that is?
Hundreds. It's hundreds. Yeah.
Dude, it's probably like
It's
thousands,
probably
tens of
thousands by
thousands.
now.
Yeah. Um, so because that's happening so fast, like people don't even know what's possible, where to start. And so they get paralyzed, right? And they're like, I don't know where to start. There's so many tools. I don't know
Yeah.
what to do. Like there's so much information. Everybody's shouting that theirs is the best. And so my concept is like, all right, first of all, understand what's possible. So that's why I've created so much content on LinkedIn, like showing what's possible, or I started a YouTube channel and my podcast to do that. So first of all, is like step one is to understand what's possible in terms of use cases. So then you could start to make connections with you and basically setting this up internally, organizationally for your business, right? So that's step one. Step two is, and this, you could do this literally in 15 minutes a day, it costs nothing to do. Sign up for one of the large language models. It could be ChatGPT or it could be Google Gemini. And basically, instead of using Google for a task that you're going to do, just try and use ChatGPT or Gemini for it, right? Something so simple like that. Start to use it because there's no substitute for actually leveraging it, right?
Right.
So I would say that step two is like starting to use it. And then step three is like, there's a lot of different ways where, there's so many prompts out there and instructions on how to use it. So, but at the same time, you're going to want to innovate on top of it. And I've seen a lot of people try and organize it differently, but I have my own internal prompt library structured by function or job to be done. So that if I want to tap into it, all I have to do is type in a couple of keystrokes. I access it and leverage it instantly, right? And so I would say to
Nice.
get started, those are the areas. And then if you're looking at like use cases as well, like you don't totally get, like there's a couple of ways, like what's a repeated task I'm spending the most time on a weekly basis, right? That's one. The other thing is like, what's something that I have to do that I'm not good at, that I don't enjoy doing, right? So that's more like a personal, do I enjoy it? And then three, like what are skills that I had, I wish I had that I don't have, right? Like, for example, I suck at graphic design, terrible at it, right? I could now jump on Midjourney or Gemini or DALL-E and create like top level artistry within a few minutes. And I never had that capability before, right? And so same thing with copywriting. Like I'm not a natural copywriter. I was always a verbal person. So to write my thoughts in the like, it would take me a long time, part of it because I have fat fingers and I suck at typing. But anyways, those are just a couple examples. So does that help?
It does. It does. And when you talk about jobs to be done in prompt library, what would an example of that be, or how can people build their own prompt library for what they're doing? Is it something they go get? Is it something that they come up with on their own? What does that look like?
Yeah. So like I have a program. So I work with folks in a couple of ways. Like I have a sales AI accelerator, which has a prompt library in there that you could start with. It's specific for the revenue function. So like you could leverage something like that. There's other ones that you could purchase online, right, to have an understanding of some prompts. So you could start there. I house it in a tool called TextBlaze, which is basically like a text expander. And I have it categorized that way. So that's how I kind of leverage it and organize it. And then that way, if you're seeing something on social or you see something that you like, you leverage a tool like mine, you have your starter prompt library, and then you can innovate on top of it and create other ways to do that.
Like that. Yeah, it's a really good thing to have. And so you're not trying to reinvent the wheel every time you want to do something new. You just go to the library and take and modify what's there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you could do that, or like you'll use it, and sometimes once you start using, if you apply that 15-minute a day example, you'll start to use it, and just by way of using it, you'll be like, oh, this is a really good output. Like, how do I use this again? And then all you do is you copy and paste it and put it in your prompt library, right? And that's how you
Yeah.
start to connect and innovate. Like one of the things that I recommend for folks that join my community for that is like, um, and I believe deeply on this, and not a lot of people do it, but it works really well. Is when you're going through that initial phase of like just trying to understand what's possible and use it, is to like write it down. I actually have like a journal, like an AI log on like that day, what you learned, what new ideas you have. And then,
That's great.
it just you keep innovating on top of it. And then you look back, you're like, oh my God, look at all this progress I made. And before I know it, like, like with my program, like you could become a world-class expert in 2 weeks if you just spend 2 hours using it, or 2 hours learning it and 2 hours using it. So it's like 2 hours a week. And you would easily get back 10 hours a week of your time, and then also level yourself up intellectually, just tons of different levels. So
So I like that. It's just consistency over time. So
yeah,
building that
you're
expertise,
spending
really,
the
really
time
smart
using
to do that.
Google anyways, right? Like
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that doesn't use a search engine all the time, right? Or the
Yep.
internet, right? So you're just making a minor shift, and it could be 10 minutes, Jeff. It doesn't, you know what I mean? But like with the thing, this is what blew me away. The other one that's good for research, if you're doing a lot of research, is Perplexity AI. So Perplexity AI is really fast. It does really good real-time research. But like if I want to look on Google and I wanted to look up something, let's say something that you talk about with your program, like your mastermind that you guys do, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to look something up on that. If I tried to look that up on Google, how many ads would be in front of like that content? How much time would it take you to weed through and really find like what was good? Versus like if you ask a really specific question with the right prompt in the right way, you can get that in like 30 seconds, So just like that's a super example. Like another one, and we didn't even talk about
That's
this,
good.
is knowledge, right? We talked about the knowledge on the teak side. So
Yeah.
knowledge, you could basically summarize an entire book in one page and then chat with that book on the specific section that you just want to know about, right? So because it's trained on
So
all these
good.
books, right? So you could do that, and I've done that, and I'm like, okay, give specific examples of actual quotes from the book or use cases that it relates to business. Like for example, I did it with Never Split the Difference with Chris Voss, right? His negotiation.
Sure.
And I said,
Yep.
okay, give me the I applied Pareto's principle. Give me the 20% of the book that's going to give me 80% of the results. Summarize it in 1.5 pages, and let me know what that looks like. That's an example of a prompt, right? Then it does it. And then it'll say something about like one of his negotiation strategies. I'm like, okay, give me real life business use cases that are mentioned in the book, and a framework of how I can apply this. And then boom, it gives it to you. Like you do the same thing with YouTube videos. You do the same thing with podcast
Yeah.
interviews. Like, so that's where like it's not just skill acquisition, it's rapid skill scaling, like Neo in the Matrix, where he jacks something into his brain and downloads this entire program, and he now knows jujitsu in a couple minutes, right? It's the same thing
Right.
emotionally, so, or mentally, I should say.
Yeah. Yeah. I love book summaries, and this is just the next iteration of that, even going deeper, and then you're able to ask questions.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things, you can listen to a book summary or read that, but then that's it. But then you do something like this. Well, now we can go deeper. We can take one of those topics and we can go really, really deep, because that's the one that you wanted to focus in on.
And you could see if it's worth reading too. Like, is it worth
Yeah,
investing
I do that all the time.
7 hours, right? Like, is it worth investing the 7
Yeah.
hours to read the book or listen to the book, right? Like, it's funny.
Right.
I just bought, I wanted to, I can't remember who recommended it. You probably read the book, The E-Myth Revisited, right? Like,
Sure.
have you read the book? And that's a book I actually haven't read. It's come up a lot. I'm like, you know what? I really should read this book, right? I'm like, you know what? I'm like, why read it already? Like, see what the summary are, and then dig into the summaries.
Yeah.
And then like I could learn probably the majority of what I need from that book in 10 minutes,
Yep.
So anyways.
And it's true of a lot of them.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they're just trying to fill up, 250, 300 pages. And it could really be, the core of it is 10 or 15.
So
And
true,
so you
man.
just want to get those core principles. And I love doing that. And then decide, is this something I really want to spend 7, 8, 10 hours digging into? And there's some books I literally read it every single year and have for 10 years, and because there's so much there. But a lot of them, it's, 5 or 6 principles. Got it. Let's move on.
What are your repeat readers? I'd be curious. I think I have an idea on what they might be, but would love to hear them.
Well, I love Napoleon Hill. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of really good
Think
stuff
and Grow
there.
Rich. Yeah.
Yep. Claude Hopkins, My Life in Advertising. It's a book from the 20s, and you think,
Really?
what does advertising in the 20s or 30s have to do with the digital world today? And quite a bit. So that's one I really like. Good to Great is one I've done a bunch of times, and so there's a handful of books like that I go back to over and over again.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. I love that. Have you read Outwitting the Devil or like any other Napoleon
Yes.
books that you really like?
Yes. Yeah, Outwitting the Devil is probably one of my favorites, and surprised it wasn't released when he was alive. Controversy and that kind of thing. And you read it now, it's like, what was controversial about that?
Things have
But
changed.
the whole idea of drifting, I see that so much in the world today, and it just laser focus on what is the purpose? How can I have an impact now, and not drifting?
That's good, man. That's good.
Yeah, and so many great books. Love that. Well, with AI and how we're using it today, and whether that's in creativity, whether it's in contact, how do we strike a balance between human touch and automation, especially when it comes to sales and outreach and building relationships and driving revenue?
Yeah. So I look at it as like, and it's so funny because like if you look at the Industrial Revolution, right, we went from digging ditches ourselves to leveraging machines to do that, right? And I think what's happened, and this kind of came full circle. I don't remember when it hit me, but like we've evolved, right? So we had machines that did it,
Sure.
then we had the internet, then we have digital tools or digital machines, to do it. But what's happening is we're still manually operating all these digital machines, right? And we're still manually operating a lot of thinking. Whereas there's ways where we could effectively automate those and leverage that. So instead of, taking a half hour to do a task, it takes 2 minutes. Instead of, trying to read a book for, 8 hours, we can get a summary in 10, 20 minutes and decide what we want to do. So there's a lot of opportunities like that. Now there's two ways where, when it comes to like the emotional connection, I think that there's some ways that AI can really augment that. And most people think it's like binary. It's either like you use AI and you're emotionless, or you don't, right? Or you do use it, or you don't. Yeah. And so kind of the way I look at it is like and this is one of the things that scared me when I saw this, and I know that basically what it is it's taken all the information in its entirety that's been on the internet from the entire world, and then pulling information from that, and then it's your idea to tap into things that you need that's customized for you, right? And so like a way that you could use it emotionally, AI, and then a way to stay emotionally connected, I'll hit both sides of it. The way that you could use it is like, if I have an enterprise B2B solution, right, or even a mid-market, whatever, but it requires a sales process, and I need to sell to a C-level executive, right? Let's say it's a chief HR officer, and I want to sell a talent management AI platform that for talent acquisition and talent management, and basically it leverages AI to optimize top of funnel for talent and then optimize my internal talent. Let's say that's the solution, which is highly specific, right? I could basically go in there and I could tell it to act like the chief HR officer at a $100 million SaaS company that's publicly traded, and basically identify the top 5 KPIs that HR officer is evaluated on, right? So that's step one. And you can get that.
That's
like,
good.
If you're really specific like that, like there's a big difference between how VC backed versus bootstrap versus publicly traded versus private are all influenced because they have different drivers that their investors push down. So that's step one. Step two is like, okay, what are the top 5 biggest challenges they have with hitting those KPIs, right? In a down market, right? Or a high inflation market, like what we're experiencing in real time. And then it'll give you responses for that. Then this is the last but not least is how do they emotionally feel when they're dealing with that, right? And then it gives you the emotions that are attached to their KPIs, that are attached to struggling to hit their KPIs. And those are ways where you can leverage it emotionally, where it can accelerate someone's acumen that never had experience in meeting with that person to have a much deeper understanding of how to connect with that person and what's important to them. So that's a way that I would leverage AI on the emotional side. And any questions on that before I jump to the other one?
Well, I think that that's really smart, and just you're doing exactly what you said back in the beginning, and putting the formula together is you're looking and you're not creating an ideal customer profile. It's that perfect customer, and then you're putting yourself, in their place. How are they evaluated? What is it they're looking for? What is it that's going to move the needle for them? And then figuring out how to position your solution that fits that. It's very different than selling from the outside of we got something awesome and it's going to make your life awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really, really different perspective. I think that's refreshing.
Yeah, thanks, man. And so that leads me to the other side that's not AI enabled. And I'll give you a real world example that I use for this because I had, multiple people that worked for me that all had different strengths and weaknesses and different performance levels. And I had 2 of my reps that were high performers, right? One was one of those hard drivers, very gritty, did all the metric detail that he needed to get deals done, had a lot of pipeline, right? And let's say, for example, and I'm giving raw numbers, but let's say he had 1.5 million in pipeline, right? Then there was another person on my team who was a woman who actually did really good at emotionally connecting to the people that she sold to. And that was down to like how to understand them, like how those KPIs really influence them. Did they want to get promoted or promoted out, from their job? What was going on with their family that was pressuring that? Did they want a second house? Did they, have medical bills from, something that happened to one of their family? All those details, right? So she was very good at understanding those layers to that. And as a result of what happened is she basically outperformed him. I think she got 140% of the results that he did, and her pipeline was half as much as his.
Wow.
So, and it was because she looked at those emotional components, made a connection to what was driving the result that they wanted, as opposed to just, get the result. And that was the motivators that they needed to get higher margins, more deals with less pipeline, right? So that's another way that you can kind of leverage it.
I like that. So how should we as leaders be thinking about AI with our teams? One is just navigating the learning curve ourselves, but also passing that on to our teams, making sure that they're trained up and that they're making use of AI tools without feeling overwhelmed or becoming dependent on them.
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeff. So I think 2023 was a year where everyone was focused on integrating AI in their product, specifically tech companies. Yeah. And I think 24 is the year where you want to integrate AI in your people, right? And continue to innovate on top of the product, right? So what I'm recommending and what I'm starting to work with revenue orgs and CEOs on is hey, it depends on the proficiency of where the team's at. It's funny, I've had founders of AI companies that are really good at using it for product, but have no idea how to use it with people, right? So,
yeah,
I mean, it's crazy, and it's like I met an AI founder who had 15 years experience, very technical, but didn't understand how to implement it on the people side. So these are like apples and potatoes, right? Because there's
absolutely.
So it's like skill transformation versus product innovation, and so what I'm working with them on is all right, let's look at your team. Well, first of all, let's have you understand how to use it for what you do as a leader, because leaders got to go first, right? And they got to understand what's possible and what the opportunity is because they have the vision. Once they do that, then you could filter it down by department to have an AI augmented organization where you basically train and enable them to know how to use these tools that you could leverage in a secure way if you know how to do it the right way. But then basically give them foundational starting points on how to use it and how to innovate. And then what will happen is you want a system of record for all those AI automations or AI use cases that your organization's having, which is where the prompt library is really good for, right? Then you could house those in there. And then what will happen is you could share those, collaborate, and start innovating on top of each other. And then you have a innovating, self-scaling organization that really takes off. And so that's what I think is super exciting from that perspective.
Yeah, I like that. And thinking about it from just a leadership perspective, and I like the distinction of putting it in our tool versus using it with people. How should we be pushing that out, to the workforce? And are there any concerns, over privacy or how it will be used or potentially misused within an organization? Or is there a way to prevent against that?
Well, I think you need to have an acceptable use policy. That's one, right?
Makes
Incorporate that in your handbook. And there's so much. Like, here's the thing: employees are using it whether they're telling you or not. Like, there's been studies.
Yeah, absolutely, they are.
and so, like, you want to, if they're gonna, they're gonna use it. It's just like with kids, right? Instead of just letting them do whatever and figure out what's right and wrong, it's like, let's give them some guardrails and help them better use it, right? And so, I mean, I would make the investment. Like, you could use ChatGPT Teams, which is $30 a month per user. And it's basically ensuring that your data is not going to be trained on or used, and it's private. So it's basically like a level between the consumer version and then the enterprise. So you could use that. You could use Microsoft Copilot. I don't know what Google has yet in terms of, from what I understand, they just released Gemini Advanced that they do train on your data, though. So I would be very careful of that, right? But I would say, like, acceptable use policy, step one. Step two is, like, what's the model that is sanctioned by the company that you're going to use temporarily, right? And then step three is basically embrace it, like, share what you learned as a leader and what you found, and basically have that in a team environment, then task your team to use it, and then come back with use cases and present them. And then, upvote the ones that work the best, recognize and innovate, and then, keep doing it over and over again. And I think you can create a very, like, virtuous cycle of innovation within your own organization of doing it that way.
I like it. So is there, like, one key skill or mindset that's essential for successfully leveraging AI in your organization?
That's great, man. It's a great question. I think I'll just give you the first thing that came to mind. So I haven't even processed this. And, like, you're asking some great questions today, man. Curiosity is what I would say. Like,
yeah, that's kind of where I was headed.
Yeah. I mean, that's the first thing. I'm like, curiosity, right? It's like, oh, I wonder if I could do this. Right. And then you try it, and sometimes it can, sometimes it can't. Sometimes it can if you do it over time. Right. Like, that's what's led me. That's where that log, like, that just documenting to yourself, like almost like journaling to yourself what you learned, becomes really powerful. Yeah. And it's just like, what did I learn? What did I use it for today? What are other areas I could use it for from there? Right. And I don't do it every day anymore, but I still do it. Like, for example, there's ways where you could leverage it for surveys, right? Like, you get surveys back from your customers, you put it through there, and you could even say, okay, assign the emotional levels to these problems on a scale of 1 through 5, with 5 being highly emotional, 1 being no emotion, right? So then you also know, like, which ones are emotionally triggered too, based on the language. So, like, there's, like, so many cool use cases for it. So anyways, that's just me geeking out on it, if it makes sense.
Yes. Oh, I love that. And especially for surveys. I think that's a really, really good use case, because I think that's somewhat difficult to build, but then, making sure that there's not bias in the questions, rewriting the questions where they're more clear. I mean, AI can do a lot of things, and really just helping make things a lot more readable, a lot more understandable in those surveys, and get the data back. But the emotional trigger, that is absolute gold.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like, there's other market research you could leverage for that too. I'm not going to get into that, but there's some cool stuff you can do with that as well.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of AI tools, technologies. Anything you find particularly promising or exciting, specifically around revenue optimization?
It's funny. So and this is simple. So I presented, I don't know, there was like 80 fractional or consultants that were all revenue leaders that I presented to last week. And the question that came up is like, hey, what tools would you recommend with a budget of $100 or less per month? Right. And I like just
I
wrote
like
that.
that.
I'm like, all right, cool. So like I thought about it. I'm like, if you're using it for data purposes and you want that protection, buy 2 licenses of ChatGPT for Teams, which is $30. It'd be $60 a month. So just use 2 of your own emails or whatever, buy it and do that for the security purposes. If you're like a solopreneur or something like that, you could use, I would say, ChatGPT Plus for $20, Google Gemini Advanced for $20 a month. Then you can leverage Perplexity for free. You can leverage Claude, which is Anthropic's model for
One of my
free.
favorites.
Yeah, I use Claude for large data sets, research papers.
Yeah.
Or do you use it for coding, or what do you use Claude for?
A lot of it for writing idea generation, naming
Okay.
things. I actually created our own custom bot
Oh,
on
nice.
Anthropic. Yeah.
Oh, did
So
you?
it's
Okay.
I've got a Jeff bot. So it asks questions and has lots of content and things like that. And so I can brainstorm with myself.
Love that, man. So did you give it all your, like, how did you train it then? Out of curiosity.
Well, it's all of our IP, all of our training, all of our videos, I mean audios, I mean everything, the entire content library.
Dude, that's
Because
awesome.
I forget what I taught 5 years ago, and then so it's pulling something back out. It's like, wow, that was so good. Why did we stop doing that?
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. I love that. That's so smart. And you use it for brainstorming against yourself, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
And let me ask you this.
yeah.
How long now you're technical in nature. I know you're not native technical, but obviously you're technical. How long did it take you to build that?
20 minutes.
Shut up. Really? See,
It took no time at all.
that's what's insane about it, right? Is like doing
Yeah,
that. And I suppose you use the developer API, so it's protected and everything like that.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything is all self-contained.
Which is smart, man.
Yeah.
So, anyways, so that was the other one. And then I think there was a couple other, there's a new tool. No, it's not too new. It's just nobody knows about it, called AI Test Kitchen. It's actually a tool by Google, which has got an image generator, a music generator, and like a creative writing assistant all in there, and it's free. And
Oh, that's
it's pretty
fantastic.
wild. I was using it for my daughter over the weekend, and she's like, she might start a business to make some money based on some things we found in there, which is wild. So
That's really cool. So we were talking before, and you were talking about teaching your kids AI. I think that's a great thing to be doing. I mean, it gives them an edge for the future. What was the thought process behind that for you?
oh yeah, man, it's a great question. Is we talk about, there's a lot of things that, as a parent, at least for me, I want my kids to develop into good humans that care about other people and have the right values and characteristics. And so then outside of that, and providing love to them, the other things you got are like, okay, how do you make sure they have some of the core life skills, like financial literacy, like what's investing, how to manage money, right? And then technical literacy, I think, is going to be super important from a skill perspective, because this is infiltrating every single part of our lives and is one of the most highly sought after skills that you could have. So what I've started to do, and I haven't systemized this down to a T, but started to train my kids on just different tools that I use. And what I'm starting to do is take more of like, hey, let's see which tools are fun. Hey, let's try this or let's try that. And we'll work on it together. And the stuff that they're creating is blowing me away. And like we'll use the image generation tools, right? And it's interesting because like they have a much, I would say, almost higher starting point than most people, because they don't have all those built-in biases yet. My kids they haven't been in high school yet, so they're under 13 and under, right? But at the same time, they're digital natives. Like they started when they were born, and the iPads were available. Screen, like it's much different than when I grew up and when you grew up, right? And so like the way that they adapt to it is really, really fast compared to some adults that I'm seeing. So I think there's a unique opportunity for young people, if they understand it, how to use it, how to learn it, and they'll do amazing things with it. And so that's part of what I'm doing, because I know it's going to be one of the biggest forces in their life that's going to happen over the next few years. So
Absolutely. I think that's so smart because it does give them such an edge. And I completely have experienced that where they're, my kids the same way and being able to image generation. We can both be trying to generate the same thing, and I'll try 10 times and get pretty bad results. And they do it, and it's like, all right, first try. Like, wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you're just like, what the heck, man?
Yeah, I'm
So,
supposed
like,
to be good at this.
yeah, like you run
Yeah.
into that stuff. Like my son created over the weekend this. We were leveraging Midjourney, and he didn't really like Midjourney. I think because it's like it's still in Discord, so it's kind of like building out. So it's a little more nuanced, but like the level, he created like a picture of Deadpool driving like the mystery machine with a pack of like pugs chasing it, and like in like a water. It turned out amazing, right? My daughter created a picture of our French bulldog in like her and I created this together in like a medieval dress. So our French bulldog dressed with, medieval outfit, right? Like a lord of the manor. So like there's stuff like that. It's kind of fun too.
That's great. It's really good for them, and it makes it fun. It's not work. It's not something that is this giant thing of AI. It's just for them. It's fun, and it's a learning experience, and they're able to create really interesting things.
Yeah. So true, man. So true.
Yeah, that curiosity and imagination.
Love it.
Yeah, we all need more of that. Where can people learn more about you online?
Yeah, man. Thanks for asking. So my podcast is the Scale Up Show. If you want to listen there, or, my website's ryanstaley.io. There's like, basically I do a weekly newsletter where I share all these basically prompts and information. It's on there. You can have access to the podcast there. And then you can connect with me too, if you want help either implementing this, for your company or your organization, or you want, basically to check out my sales AI accelerator or go to market accelerator as well with AI.
And we'll make sure and link all of that in the show notes, and every resource, every website, every tool that Ryan has mentioned will also be in the show notes. But Ryan, fantastic discussion. Thanks for being on Saas Fuel.
Yeah, man, this was a blast. Thanks for having me on. You had some great questions, Jeff.
Thanks again, Ryan, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and incredible insights on revenue growth, and especially the AI. Very, very cool stuff. Really enjoyed our conversation. Super helpful. You can learn more about Ryan and Whale Boss at ryanstaley.io. As always, all links, resources, highlights, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. Lots of stuff there. Full episodes, video shorts, outtakes, training. It's all over there on YouTube. I challenge you to share this episode with at least 3 people who need a little AI sales magic in their lives. You up for that? Everyone who shares this week gets a Bot Buddy. It's a mini AI companion that offers witty banter, helpful reminders, and occasionally unsolicited advice on life. It seems like I've got one of those already. Join us next Tuesday, where our founder is Roland Siebling. He's a 3-time tech founder with a profound understanding of the challenges inherent in scaling a business. He's elevated 3 companies to unicorn status. We will dig into that and see if we can find some unicorn magic for our own companies. And then next week on our Saas Fuel Expert Series, we have Justin Chi. He is the co-founder of Cold Email Hackers. We'll be talking about B2B lead generation strategies that work in 2024 and fixing the struggle of message market fit. So I'll see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to Saas Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/saasfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.
Let's go!